Alright, this is a documentation of turning a pepper grinder from start to finish out of solid walnut. As you can see, the grain of the walnut's pretty figured, so it didn't like to cut too well. First step, I went ahead and selected my wood and planed it down, keeping it as close to an inch thick as possible. That way, when I got 4 pieces, I could laminate them together to make a 4-inch thick block. That way it was perfectly square, and then I jointed one side of it so I could rip it parallel on the table saw. I went ahead and set the blade height to about 1/4 inch tall, so about a carbide cutter tall. To keep my fingers away from the blade as close as possible, so I keep the table saw pretty low. This was pretty straightforward. Ripped it to 4 inches so it would be square when I glued it up. Then I went to set a stop block on the miter saw to make cross cuts at 6 inches long, so I can make multiple cuts at the same size. That just make things easier lining them up on when I was gluing everything together. I repeated this process about 4 times. Yeah. Next was the glue up. I went ahead and laid all the pieces down and clamped them down. I went to use the squeeze bottle and the glue didn't want to come out, so I grabbed the bottle and just poured some on there, being impatient. But I was really careful not to run the paintbrush on the edge of the board because I didn't want to coat the end grain and make a big mess. So I just painted going off the edge instead of against it. Then clamped everything together best I could. That's when I went glue saving mode all over the piece. When I walk away, I go and grab a wet cloth to wipe off any excess glue, just to clean things up a little bit. Here I am. I already ripped the sides square. Now I'm squaring off the ends to make a nice solid block with a clean surface on each end, so I can go ahead and put draw the centers on the blank from corner to corner. And that went fairly easily. Just went ahead and repeated this on both sides of the blank. I really should have cut the notches for the access with like a back saw. That way the spur center's teeth would stick into it a little bit stronger, but it turned out just fine. I gave it a pretty good whack. Went ahead and mounted it on the lathe. I made sure that the cup center went firmly into the end of it and compressed it a little bit more onto the spur center. Then I took a gouge to knock off the corners and get it kind of round, but the gouge wasn't very sharp, so I went and dug out the carbide cutter and I started roughing material down, because the carbide cutter is really good for rounding material or tearing a lot of material out as fast as possible. But it's really a really aggressive tool. So you can see me checking the top of it with the tool to see if it's round. I just brought it down to round and grabbed the calipers and took the top of what you're looking at, the top of the pepper mill right now. I brought it down to about 2.5 inches so that the antique piece could sit on top of it and have a good amount of space for the screws to go into it. And here's this tool just doing a good job of hogging out material. I switched to a round nose to kind of clean up the surface a little bit and also get the nice shape I wanted. Used it to carve a nice bead into the bottom. Then I used a parting tool to kind of define the areas of where I went in with the round nose. And I cleaned everything up with a skew to save some time on sanding. I sanded it from 80 grit to, I want to say 400 grit. And, you know, the boring process of sanding really pays off. The more you sand, the better it turns out. I mean, everyone takes sanding for granted, but I don't. Sanding is 100%, 90% of the woodworking. Then I used a nice trick my teacher taught me. I grabbed some fine shavings from the table saw and I buffed out the wood and it came out beautiful. I went ahead and mounted a 1/2 inch drill bit in the drill press, and I held held it as firm as possible against the table so it wouldn't catch on me. So drilled straight in from each side to get a perfect, try and get a perfect seam. But when it came out, sometimes they don't come out quite perfect. There's a lip on the inside, but this one came out pretty nice. It's just about completely perfect. And thanks for watching. I mean, I think the figured walnut looks absolutely beautiful with this antique pepper mill. Go ahead and comment and rate and subscribe.